You all ready to go?
There you go.
All right. Is this considered an official meeting, or is this just like working through the LD ordinances?
Yes, it's a workshop. We
Just-
consider it a workshop.
Okay. All right, great. So we don't go through all the formalities and whatnot.
No, it
Great.
isn't necessary.
Super.
I think you do have to establish a quorum,
Yeah.
Okay.
so you have to just make
So you do have to go
a
through
declaration. So you can go on the record.
Sure. All right. Well, it's Tuesday, February 6th. This is the planning board. I'm Gabriel Whitney.
Jim Williams?
Jerry Mitchell.
I'm Max Johnston.
Next. And we're going to be doing a workshop on the land use ordinance and development review to comply with LD 2003. So, where do you want to start?
Sure. Well, you should have just in front of you with the red and the use chart on the front page. I guess
Can I interrupt just for a moment?
Yeah, sure.
What can we do for you?
Is this
Hi,
comments?
I'm John Jones, and this is Christy Longwood on Tone Lane. And we had some issues in the past with some stuff, land use ordinances, and we just want to get them clarified. Just wondering, we didn't know this was a workshop, so we decided
See if we
to
can learn
leave
something.
work and come here and see if we can learn something, find some information from you guys, or what exactly the writing means to us, I guess, we're not.
Have you talked to the code officer?
I did. He was very vague, and he said he had to look into it, but
Okay.
I've read some other stuff, and
Yeah.
I just, I didn't know where to go with it.
Tonight, what we're doing is a workshop to consider two major changes to the ordinance. Our regular meeting is a week from tonight, at
Yes.
6. So, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure either.
Well, I think my changes for 2003 are actually going to be pretty brief, and the shoreline zone, I don't know exactly what you'd like me to go over that one. And I don't know if you have any specific items you were wanting to point out.
I had some items that was written in the land use ordinances. I just wanted clarification of them. I don't want to hold you guys up and doing what you're supposed to. It said workshops, so I didn't quite understand, what.
Yeah, no.
I don't have a problem if you're.
I don't
know.
either.
Yeah, you have something.
Max, you
specific?
know.
Yeah.
We can't make any real decisions tonight.
Yes.
because
No,
it's
I
not on
just-
the agenda and so forth.
No.
We're certainly willing to talk with you and let you, describe your, issue and so forth.
Just clarifications, there's a couple. Let me try to find a page.
Yep.
And the thing, that way you guys can all look at the thing, I guess page 12, conflicting ordinances. It says, H, page 12, section H. Under conflicting ordinances, it says whenever a provision of the ordinance is in conflict with another provision of the ordinance or any other lawfully adopted rule, regulation, ordinances, deed, restrictions, or covenants. The most restrictive of that imposing the higher standards should govern. I don't know if I could use example or whatever. For example, say you got a covenant on a piece of land, you guys would have to go by that covenant, right? If it,
Yeah, we don't generally get involved.
yes.
These covenants are done between various parties and subdividers and the lot owners or whatever it is. And our job is not to enforce those.
Yes.
Our job is to interpret the ordinance and
Yes.
and to guide people through so they can get permits or
Yes.
meeting the private deed covenants. We would not be involved in.
Is that what you're talking about, a covenant on deed?
Well, it's actually multiple things. It's actually got to do with the solar company.
It's a mixed lot, like, most of the lot's one thing.
It's
residential. There's one slip that is, a small piece of it is urban development, but it is still one lot.
Yes.
So how can they break off a piece of that lot and decide to use it as something else when it has a mixed lot,
We bought
is what we're saying.
We bought our property and this came with a road association, a covenant, and it's pretty specific. And it's pretty specific, it says residential use. And the whole, it was basically all one lot, and I bought this house with one lot separate.
Okay.
And then the rest of the property was sold off to a solar company. And the back side of the lot, which is all one lot, is just got a little sliver that's in the urban development on the wing farm. So the rest of the property is in residential use only. And they're trying to move forward with the solar panels. But I don't understand how they can even do this
When it's one lot. So-
when it's all one lot, but originally it states right in the town, in all the ordinances that they have to go by residential. And
Because it's a conflict of law, a conflict of ordinance.
We have many situations where, especially in the shoreline area, where
yeah,
somebody will own 400 feet deep and the shoreline area might only go back 250 feet. So part of the lot is subject to the shoreline zone and the back part of it, the last 150 feet or whatever, is not. So that happens all the time. The
yes,
property lines don't necessarily follow the zoning lines.
yes.
And probably the best person to talk to is Jonathan.
I
But I mean,
did,
if he said it's something he's got to look at, it sounds to me like it's pretty complex. But tell me where you are.
Same for commercial and urban.
It's already on the urban development line, on the other side of the power
Yes.
line. I guess.
Can you just show me where you are?
our lot is,
Up further,
Yeah.
up further, up.
Oh.
Orange is the.
oh, right here, I'm the R, the second R, that's my lot right here. Okay.
So,
And I have a shared right of way with this lot right here, which is deeded residential use for the whole thing. They put this in for the school a while back, because this was landlocked and the school stated that they were never gonna do anything back here, but originally they wanted to put solar panels completely around my house lot.
yeah, well,
And then
next,
come back.
yeah,
So they're trying to put them in the,
So now-
urban development?
Yeah, so now they wanna put it, in this little section right here, it's 4 acres, and they're proposing to bring a road in all the way from up here. I don't know if you guys know the wing farm or anything of that road back there, but that's quite a feat to put a road in there. It's
Yeah, it's
pretty much
all-
outside of a mountain, you're talking a lot of money.
so what's your
Financially.
question, what's your question today?
Okay, so my information about the overlay zones and requirements, from everything I read, that this whole piece should be considered residential.
They should have to follow those.
And they gotta
zoning
follow
laws.
those rules. In the covenant, I brought a copy of the,
Yeah,
road
I'm not
association
sure where it is.
covenant,
We might be able to find it.
which they have all received a
Yeah.
copy of it.
Yeah, it's somewhere.
My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is next Tuesday, the
Yes,
solar company is gonna come in and seek approval.
yes,
And that would be a perfect time to,
Yeah, but.
yes. Well, I was just wondering about the zonings, because in the, I just had it in my hand, I'm sorry, I had too much paperwork here. So this one here, the zoning, conflict of interest, this one here, Bean couldn't explain it to me, which is Article 2, Land Use of Districts, page 14. Land Use of Districts and Overlay Zone Requirements. It's about 2/3.
yeah,
And it goes down, it talks about overlay zones, wherever a lot or a portion of a lot, and land within an overlay zone. The more restricted the district of the overlay zone shall apply to that portion of the lot within the overlay zone. individual lots in more than one district, wherever an individual lot is in more than one district, the portion of that lot within a given district shall be subject to provisions of the ordinance applicable of that district.
Which, can you state the paragraph again you were reading that from?
Article 2, land use.
It's on page 14.
Page 14, yeah.
Down near the bottom. Article 2.
So he couldn't really explain to me, he was gonna look into it.
Wherever individual lot is in more than one district, portion of the lot within a given district shall be subject. So, if the, so if a lot is in 2 districts, then whatever part's in the RR zone is subject to those rules, and the part that's in the urban development zone is subject to those rules.
Is that how you interpret it? I know it says the more restrictive rules, right?
No, it says, if an individual lot is in more than one district, the portion of the lot within a given district shall be subject to the provisions applicable to that district.
Yeah, now read the rest of it.
That's the end of the paragraph. It's not an overlay zone.
Okay. But I just want clarification on that article.
I think perhaps the best, is for you to bring this to our meeting.
Yeah,
When they're here to be considered. And
yeah, we
Jonathan,
plan on being there, but just we
and
didn't know.
Jonathan will also be here,
Yes,
so.
because they were supposed to notify us in the last couple of meetings, we haven't been notified for any of the meetings in the past.
Okay.
Until this
And-
one that they're
Well,
gonna.
Just
again,
got a certified letter
I'm
for
not-
it because I came
We
around.
really shouldn't be discussing
Okay,
too much without them
Right,
here.
yeah.
It wasn't,
Yes.
they weren't notified there was gonna be
no, I just,
discussion, and it was, because we do
Well, they
publish
didn't
what we're
notify
gonna talk
us,
about.
so.
yeah,
To give notice to everybody, so we
That's
haven't,
actually the town, right?
we haven't given them notice.
yes.
Right. So how,
So if you guys weren't
when,
notified, that's
when
not
did the
them.
solar company
Okay.
come
Well, I don't
come
know.
before the board?
I'm
When
sorry,
was
the
there's
last
a lot of people talking right
Yes,
now,
there
I'm
are.
sorry.
But I don't think the board should go any further really with this tonight with you.
Yes.
Just because the applicant's not here,
Yes.
and you're starting to talk about some of the
Yes.
things they did or didn't do. and,
Yes. No, I agree with
where
you. No, I
we
just,
haven't included them on the agenda,
yeah,
and this is a workshop to consider
Yes.
2 other things.
yes.
I mean, and,
No, basically I came here to get, understanding of the zoning regulations, the land use laws.
we'll talk to
Exactly,
Jonathan.
to clarify it.
Talk to him in the next week, and he comes to every planning board meeting. He should
Yeah.
be here, and hopefully we can
This is a
get it
workshop.
all lined up.
Yes,
So please come back on Tuesday, and my understanding is they're on the agenda.
Oh, I don't know, I haven't looked
I
at the
believe they
agenda.
are,
yeah.
Yes.
So they should be here, and
okay.
there's information upstairs, that Kylie has, all that they've submitted, and you're welcome to look at that, and get copies of whatever you need, certainly.
Because I just didn't know the ordinances where it says it's conflicting ordinances. Back to H, the first one that I brought up, conflicting ordinances. Whenever a provisions ordinance is in conflict of, that's page 12, provisions of the ordinance, and are lawfully adopted rule, regulation, ordinances, deed, restrictions, or covenants. And the most restrictive,
So why does
that
it say,
imposing the higher standards shall govern,
if you don't use deeds, then why is it deeds mentioned in your?
or covenants, I just,
So in general, I think, and Christine can correct me, but I think like we've run into this in the past where people didn't follow their covenants and developments, right? And like the town had no legal recourse.
We don't have any legal recourse, it's a civil matter. Yeah,
Between the parties that created the covenants.
yes.
yeah.
But say if there's 2 conflicting parties of a covenants or whatever, say I want to build a Walmart, and I have a covenant saying I can only use it for residential use, can you go ahead and authorize the permits? That's, I don't,
I'm not sure I follow that scenario
So
completely.
there's an issue with land use, well, any land use with the restrictions on any of these, can somebody move forward and keep?
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying, like, I don't think it should say
Keep
deed in there, honestly, right? Like, if we can't enforce covenants, if the town has no legal authority to enforce covenants, like, there shouldn't be anything written in the ordinance saying.
No, and that's one of the notes I have for actually when we get to the ordinance, that some of these things that are civil matters probably should be removed, or at least a recommendation where the CEO can make, or plan would
Yeah.
do the permit, but make a note that you can't, that just because you're giving a permit doesn't mean you're superseding an easement, that's a civil matter.
Correct. Exactly.
That's kind of my question, I guess.
So-
How to come across and ask
No,
them,
I think
right?
you're asking it just right, and again, it is a civil matter between the parties who created the covenants. It's not something the town can legally enforce. We enforce this ordinance,
Yes.
that's voted on by the members of the town, but all of these individual covenants that are done, we don't enforce those.
Yes.
Or at least the planning board doesn't, and I'm pretty sure
Yeah, I know.
the rest of the selectmen and
enforcement.
so forth wouldn't do it. And I understand I understand your thought process with that,
Yeah,
but essentially those covenants they're a contract between the parties who signed them.
yes.
And so and those parties or the heirs and the signs are the ones that need to enforce them, essentially. That's how I understand it. And I'm not an attorney, so.
Yes, yes, I'm not even.
I'm not giving legal advice, but as Christine said, that would be a civil matter. But come to a meeting a week from tonight, and
Well, we
Jonathan
plan on
should
now,
be
we're
here.
notified about it.
what's that?
Oh, so we plan on it now, we were
From
notified
the
about
last
it.
one, though.
No, that's why we have, everything's published, and that's why we have extra seats for everybody. Some people have some thoughts and comments, we want to hear what they are.
No, I appreciate your time, I just want to get some clarification
Okay.
on that.
And I'm sorry we couldn't help you more tonight, but
Yeah,
hopefully we'll see you next week.
all right. Thank you.
You want my paper?
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
You don't want to
So,
see it?
my apologies, Max.
You want to know?
Okay.
We'll be here.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, I'll leave you that.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Take care, guys.
Good night.
See you next week.
Sounds good.
I hope I didn't overstep my saying.
No, I think you're.
Everybody's welcome to disagree
Well,
anytime.
there was some back and forth on what the speed said, or it seemed to go through, or you gave your point, they kept going back to their same point. It's not, wasn't really addressed. Yeah, I'm making a note to move that covenant and deed out.
Yeah, that should come out, that's not, because that is misleading. Oh my gosh, we don't want to be a judge in that case. Oh, no.
So anyways, LD 2003. So, you do have a document that states the changes that I would make that would be made into your ordinance to help you get into compliance. The first one's on page 12, updating your matrix chart, your ordinance. This is going to be removing and adding in some additional language. For example, you have item 2, renting rooms in an existing dwelling to not be more than 2 persons. I'm recommending to scratch that out and just say that's the accessory dwelling unit or the accessory apartment, whichever you prefer to call it.
So where is that now? It's not.
Page 21 is what I found about. Your
Okay.
matrix.
Item 2.
Item 2, it says renting rooms in existing dwelling to not. That's the other thing when I'm updating this ordinance. I'm planning on just giving the use title rather than a long description like that. But that's later on down the pipeline. So item 2, I would suggest having as the accessory dwelling unit. That's one of the LD 2003 required items, which would just be accessory apartment, it's just dwelling unit, essentially.
Feel like you'd be getting rid of boarding houses then? Right, you're crossing out all the two, right?
Yes, that, I have to do, yes.
So,
Is that what boarding house is?
so we're gonna I'm sorry, are we gonna delete then about renting rooms?
I mean, it could be, it could just be its own independent one if you prefer that instead. I just saw renting of rooms in an existing dwelling unit, not more than 2 persons. I assumed that was what we would consider an accessory apartment.
I don't know, like in downtown Bath, like you can, you know, I know those, when I was a kid, there was multiple, like boarding houses, like where guys would stay.
I mean, this could just be,
I think we'd wanna leave, you know, let people still be able to
go
rent,
back,
you know, up to 2 persons at a room or rooms, we'd wanna still leave that there.
so in that
I'm
case,
not sure, I haven't run across that case, but perhaps Jonathan has, but,
so in that case, accessory dwelling unit could just be its own line item then.
Okay.
right.
I'd assume leaving the permits for everything except the resource protection, because that's what we have for single families.
Because that could just be almost like a roommate, right? Like you're saying, a boarding house, where we have a 2-bedroom house and rent out 1 bedrooms.
Yes and no, it would just be, like it's defined, a self-contained dwelling unit located within, attached or detached from a single-family dwelling unit, located on the same parcel, that's at least 190 square feet. That's on page 3, one of the first definitions I have.
Okay, so then, yeah, it sounds like it's separate things.
Yeah, it's not the same as a dwelling unit. Next page, shows the definition. Oh, you had it right there. Yep. First definition.
Well, I think this, yeah, because this is speaking to something that's not self-contained necessarily, right? It's just a room for rent.
Right, and that's where I was
Gotcha.
misunderstanding it. Your matrix describes the whole thing rather than the item itself, so that's why I was confused.
I got you.
So we're not gonna be,
So you can keep the boarding room, so item 2, I'll leave alone. Accessory dwelling unit will just be added in as a new number 3.
okay, and we'll keep the existing number 3 also, correct?
Yes. 80 will just be the new number 3, and then everything else after
Just,
will be shifted
Sure.
down a number.
so, is it possible then to, under number 6, is it possible to restrict,
Multifamily to
yeah,
up to four
only
dwelling
4 dwelling units per structure?
You can if you would like.
Well, again, I haven't had a lot of history with this, but I hate to make a change when there's some other history I'm not aware of. And, I mean, certainly we want to meet LD 2003.
I can certainly,
Maybe just make it its own number again, like we did for...
I can certainly see if you can restrict the number of dwelling units.
Well, once it goes over 4, it becomes commercial, right? Like 4 units in a multifamily is,
Multifamily is 3 units or more.
or, well, I thought it was 4, or maybe I'm
You
misunderstanding.
guys have had it as 4 units or more, but the LE 2003 definition is 3 or more. A lot of other towns have it as 3 or more. And that's kind of why I'm saying 6 would be amended that way and 7 would be removed entirely, because you have these 2 different standards for multifamily.
Oh, isn't it interesting?
Right, where you're pretty much saying anything that's going to exceed 8 units is prohibited in town. Which,
Yeah.
But there's no, it's not permitted in any zone under number 7, right?
right, so if I'm following that ordinance correctly, that means it's prohibited.
Correct.
So that's why I feel we should just get rid of number 7, and 6 is just multifamily.
So where is? MHP,
Mobile home park.
okay. And BC, business commercial, which is pink. So the only area that's mobile home park is allowed is along the State Road corridor, or at least to the north of it, is that right, on the east end?
It's right down by the store, it goes down by the storage area and then across the street, I think.
Yeah, okay.
So could that just be a byline? Like a, not, you know, for 3 or more, not to exceed 8?
Yeah, I'd have to see if you can put a limit on multifamily housing, but, yeah, I can, 3 to 8. So that's fine. Can I ask why the limit on 8 units?
Boy,
No idea.
I don't know where it came from.
Well, if that's something to do with Green Acres, I guess.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'd be really hesitant to remove that, just because I'm not aware of the issue of it.
Chris, you know why that might be in there?
No, I don't have any idea.
Do you think the code enforcement officer might know?
I'm not sure he has the history to know, but it's possible. We can find out.
Yeah, it'd be fine to ask, just because that's the other common thing I've been finding with some other towns where I'm saying, well, why do you have this restriction in residential? And they'll say, why do we have that restriction? And then we'll just choose to remove it. So that's just why I suggested removing 7, because I don't understand why there's a restriction on that for multifamily. The other thing is,
Well, if we keep 6, it says not to exceed 4 dwelling units, except in MPH and BC. Oh, and your thought was, Gabe, is to make it
3 to 8.
3 to 8. I guess that'd be fine. I'd be all right with that.
I would just have to see.
I'm
if that
curious too, as why
complies.
why it's capped at 8. I mean, how would we figure that out?
Do we know how many units are at the,
Has anyone you've spoken to known why? Or had a
why
reason
that limit is in there?
Yeah, why it's at 8?
That's why I'm asking,
No one has, okay.
how many units do you think we're at the green?
Probably 20 in each one. You know, and it's
Probably.
a lot. It's probably more than
Yeah.
8. But that doesn't really make sense. Well, I agree, maybe like it's almost like a fire hazard or something. I don't know.
It's possible somebody else has the history, like David Hennessy was on the planning board a long time ago. He might-
Jay might know.
Jay might know.
I can see if you can have it as multifamily units between 3 to 8 units. And see if that would be allowed for the state law. I'm a bit agree on that. So I will ask about that. 7 would just be removed. And we can make a note elsewhere that just says, multifamily is restricted to 3 to 8, anything more is supposed to be prohibited. Assuming that's what we're doing with this change, that's being suggested. Well, and then the only other item, I just didn't this is optional, just while we're doing it. Bed and breakfast lodging as a home occupation with 2 or less bedrooms to let. I just wanted to know if you wanted to just call it a short-term rental at that point. That sounds exactly like a short-term rental. And so I'm just suggesting putting that in there to be clear about it.
I don't know if a bed and breakfast would be, I wouldn't consider a bed and breakfast to be short, I'd consider it to be more like
A separate thing.
I think a short-term rental, I just think it's like someone just shows up and lives in, somebody's house for a couple days. Or like a camp rental. Not like a bed and breakfast is like almost like a hotel slash.
Yeah, there's
Right.
someone who's there.
Right.
Whereas so short term, you have
Nobody.
full use of the,
Where's 1.3 in the ordinance?
Should still be in the chart.
Was it
13.
13.
Probably 13.
13,
Accidental period in there.
Oh, okay.
Not case. As I said, it's just an optional item.
So
well,
what,
no, actually bed and breakfast.
I'm trying to find that. I
Yeah.
still haven't found that.
It should be 13.
Bed and breakfast lodging,
Oh, yeah, it should probably under commercial.
under,
Right here. Okay, so page 26, bed and breakfast establishment.
okay.
I don't know anywhere.
So on 10, and so I have a note that said, we've got it, you can have a bed and breakfast in the urban development park, and I wrote that it should be removed. But, you can't live in the urban development park, I believe. That sound right?
I think so.
I don't know, they thought about building a hotel in the urban development, right? Wing Farm,
Mhm.
at one point.
So short-term rentals, yeah, are completely different from B&B in my mind.
Yep, in that case, I can just remove it. That was just a recommendation.
Okay.
Making while we were working on this.
So
I will,
also known as a short-term rental will come right out then.
yep,
Okay.
I'll leave that alone.
And do we want to take that out of, as a permitted use in the urban development?
Well, that's why I have a note, I don't know why, when I said it should be removed. I think we had a conversation here at one point that you can't live in the urban development park. But I also remember the whole purpose of the urban development park was for a hotel. So I don't know why I wrote that note.
Okay, so we'll just leave it.
Just leave it, yes.
Okay.
Okay. And then the 2 paragraphs you see under there were just the reasons I had talking about multifamily and for the short-term rental item, but we've addressed both of those. So then we get to page 33, item 10. There shall be off-street parking for at least 2 cars per, it just says dwelling, but I'd say single family, just to be clear about that, but that was just a suggestion. Because it just says dwelling, so I don't, are we saying, can I see page 33, just so I can get the full context? Keep in mind, these were notes I made quite some time ago, so.
Yeah.
Page 34, there should be off-street parking for these 2 cars, or, so that shouldn't say single family, that should just say dwelling units. No, that's my mistake.
Okay, so for dwelling unit.
Yeah, take out single family and I'll say dwelling unit instead.
So we can require that for a single-family dwelling, we can require 2 parking for 2 cars.
Right, you already have that you already require at least 2 cars per dwelling. And I just put in unit there just because
Okay.
clarity. And because LD 2003 says dwelling units, so yeah, that's more me on my nitpicky side.
so if someone was to have an ADU, that would have to have parking as well?
No, so, well, at least outside of the shoreline zone, an accessory dwelling unit does not have to have a parking space,
Okay,
nor does it need to meet the minimum lot size requirements that we have.
okay.
And then that gets into what will be the new number 11, and everything else will shift down. So only one accessory dwelling unit may be constructed on each lot that has an existing single-family or duplex on the lot. The accessory dwelling unit may be within an existing dwelling unit, attached to an existing dwelling unit, or detached from an existing dwelling unit. And the reason it just says that is to cover all bases. An accessory dwelling unit shall also, A, be exempt from providing off-street parking as long as the lot has off-street parking for the primary dwelling unit. B, be exempt from all density requirements. Accessory dwelling units are still required to provide minimum lot standards if located in the shoreline zone.
I thought LD 2003 didn't have anything to do, did not change anything in the shoreline zone.
What do you mean by that?
All these requirements.
So, leading up to the original deadline last year, one of the big questions was, does this mean an accessory dwelling unit doesn't need to meet the minimum lot standards and the parking requirements that are in the shoreline zone? But then the state did their 11th hour change, which is why we got this 1-year extension. But it also clarified you have to permit accessory dwelling units in the shoreline zone, but your shoreline, the town's shoreline zone supersedes LD 2003. So you could have as many restrictions as you want in an accessory dwelling unit, and that's fine. So if you require 1 acre lot size in the shoreline zone, an accessory dwelling unit needs to have that 1 acre as well. That makes sense?
I think so. So if you have a non-conforming lot though, there's no,
So,
Non-conforming lot means you're probably not going to get accessory dwelling unit in the shoreline zone if it's not a conforming lot.
well, if it's a non-conforming lot, it says right in there you don't need to meet the
Minimum lot size.
minimum lot size, the area.
Right,
So
so
I think it would.
outside the shoreline zone, if you have a non-conforming lot, you still have your single family on there, you can still have an accessory dwelling unit as long as it meets setbacks, height restrictions, everything else, and doesn't make it more non-conforming. You're allowed to do that.
All right, so what I'm thinking though is like, say you have a dwelling, and you decide to make the basement the accessory dwelling.
Yep.
Then you meet all the setbacks,
Yep.
so then you could do it.
You could.
okay.
But if you're in a shoreline zone, same scenario, but let's say you're on 1/10 of an acre or something like that, very small unit, so it would never meet the minimum lot size if it was done today. But same scenario, single family that's already on there and you want to turn the basement into an accessory dwelling unit, then that wouldn't be permitted unless you want to add specific language saying an accessory dwelling unit doesn't meet the minimum lot size in the shoreline.
Because the shoreline requirement or restrictions would prevent it.
Correct.
But what about like a non-conforming lot, like it's exempt from all that?
If it's in the shoreline zone, accessory dwelling units still need to meet the lot size requirements. I know they love to mention
It's
this.
like you can't add, like a
So-
non-conforming could be, it could exist in the shoreline, but then if you wanted to add anything, even if it was within that building, then you wouldn't be able to because you're not meeting the shoreline requirements, even though the house that, or dwelling that's there does, being a non-conforming.
And that's in the state language,
That's the statement.
that it has to be.
Yes. Unless, but the town can be more lenient, so if you want to be just consistent across the board, so that if someone wants to do that scenario of existing single family, turn the basement into an ADU, on a non-conforming both outside and in the shoreline, you can do that as well.
But doesn't that conflict with the law? Because
No, so
the DEP originally said that, you know, well, like they wanted no more expansion in the shoreline area.
right.
So,
But again, this would, yeah, it's a fun law.
Yeah, you sure, because like, and if you go to our table, you're allowed to do it.
Right. The minimum is, you have to allow the accessory dwelling unit, and it has to meet whatever your shoreline zone says for an accessory dwelling unit. So if in the shoreland, your minimum is saying any dwelling unit needs to have an acre of land, then that's what your ADU has to meet.
You have to, no, second, you have to have at least 2 acres.
Right.
And if you, and you could subdivide, I mean, you could sell, if you had 2 acres,
Yep,
and the rule is 1 acre,
yep,
you could sell off an acre anyway,
yep.
right? I mean,
But again, that's based on whatever your shoreline zone says. So if your shoreline zone has rules specifically for an ADU that says it doesn't, it's not applicable to minimum lot size standard, like what LD 2003 is requiring outside of the shoreline zone, that's permitted.
So in that scenario, you wouldn't even need 2 acres. If you had an acre and you had an existing dwelling there, then you could build an ADU and that would be able to be, like, you'd be able to because it would have the acre that exists.
you need a second acre.
They would
Right.
need
No,
a
because it
second,
would fit
they would
the,
need a second acre unless your ordinance specifically says otherwise.
okay.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I guess my feeling is that, no, we don't, there's so many of these tiny lots. We don't want to overload these, possibly these tiny lots that have water and septic issues anyway. We
That's
don't want to
perfectly fine.
overload them with a second ADU.
And that's fine.
I mean, that'd be my initial thought anyway. Let's say you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm just thinking like of the scenario where there's an existing house on an acre, and let's say you finish the basement and want to make an ADU. You're not expanding anything outside of that existing dwelling.
Okay,
So I don't see how that would be, an issue, like any reason to restrict someone from wanting to do that. Like, I guess, so,
I can think of a scenario where there's a lot, and it's 50 by 80, and there's a dwelling unit on it,
okay,
and the septic's on the neighbor, and, you know, a second dwelling unit in that, within that structure, could very well stress the septic and so on and so on.
right.
And also
Well, then,
there's a
yeah,
water issue too, I mean, in that particular case, but, so I guess that's what I'm thinking about on these, you know, it's on these tiny lots, just.
well, yeah, but that's what I'm saying though, is if it's a tiny lot, that's one thing, but if it's like, if it's something that meets the basic requirement, or that it's not stressing the lot any further per se.
Okay, how would we do that?
That's what I'm trying, that's what I'm trying to think about, like if it.
I didn't really worry about anything in the shoreline zone because I didn't think that LD 2003 applied in the shoreline zone, you know.
The only way LD 2003 applies is that you have to permit an accessory dwelling unit, but the ADU still has to follow your shoreline zone ordinance.
So essentially,
So if you do,
it's almost like a new build permit, because you need to have everything.
it's essentially a dwelling unit.
Right.
But see, if it has to follow our shoreline zoning, then it would be allowed on a non-conforming lot.
Then that's fine if it is.
One way to do it, Gabe, would be to say if the lot in the shoreline area is a conforming lot, then an ADU would be allowed.
Yeah,
So you mean if there is a non-conforming lot that already has a single-family home on it, I could build an ADU on it, even if it makes it more non-conforming?
I'm not saying that.
But like the basement scenario we're doing.
No, you couldn't do that.
The basement scenario wouldn't be
No.
applied right now. Maybe I'm,
But right now, you could not do that. If LD 2003 takes effect and it encompasses the shoreline zone, then I believe you'd be allowed to do it by following our ordinance again. Just, I know that doesn't make sense.
we might have to talk more about, because we're going, maybe missing something with what you're saying, so.
So like right now, if you have a non-conforming lot, you can build it if it meets the setbacks,
Yes.
okay?
So you have your single family.
Single family, you can
Yep.
meet the setbacks. Right now, you don't have enough acreage
To do an ADU.
to do an ADU. With 2003, the acreage thing would go away, so then I think you'd be allowed to do
Is there a minimum lot size in the shoreline zone?
it. It doesn't apply to a non-conforming lot.
Okay, in that case, then no. So an ADU could be done, do you know where that might specifically be?
It's just a general statement about non-conforming lots.
Because that sounds like more of a problem than what we're talking about with a lot that is conforming and wanting to just add.
About 10, page 10, 11, that's talking about page 9, non-conforming lots. Paragraph F3. Goes into a lot of detail about non-conforming lots.
That's deep. Page 11, that's 3?
On page 11, paragraph 5.
Paragraph 5, no non-conforming buildings or structures may be altered or enlarged without appeal from an alteration. I'm just gonna go over here.
I'm not sure that that's, then there's a 30%.
Okay, you're actually in the shore. What months is this? Will maybe alter or enlarge without appeal. Okay, so that's, okay, I see. That seems a little different. Okay, this is the one he was talking about.
Mine is dated May 16, 2023.
Yeah. Yeah, it's 11.5 ABC. Okay. Non-conforming buildings may be altered or enlarged. Where does that say that an accessory dwelling unit doesn't need to meet the, or, I guess I'm trying to, will cause no. So that's stating that if I'm on a non-conforming lot and I'm just gonna put something in there that doesn't make it more non-conforming, I don't have to go to the Board of Appeals. That's different from what you two are talking about. Because what that's saying is, if I have my 1 acre lot and you have a 2 acre minimum, I don't have to go to the Board of Appeals as long as I'm not violating a setback or doing anything else.
Right.
But I think the point we're trying to get at is, there are supposedly some lots or some permissions in the shoreline zone that as long, that if it's a non-conforming lot, acreage is an additive or something?
So it's in the table. Where's, you know where the table is?
Okay, page 21,
21.
or starting.
No, it's not that, different table. I got a tab in my old book. The standard setback table.
Okay, that's at the, that's on about page 29.
Okay. So
Oh, that type. High density shoreline, legally non-conforming lots.
you've got, so say it says
Right.
lot size,
1 acre, 2 acre, all that.
but then if you go through, one of these footnotes for non-conforming lots says you don't have to meet the area.
maybe on the next page. Yeah, you already have 14 at least right here. An accessory residential unit shall not count as a dwelling unit in determining minimum lot standards. So I suppose you could just expand that and say that it's applicable in the shoreline zone as well, and then we can end this discussion.
An accessory residential unit shall not count as a dwelling unit.
And determining minimum lot. So you guys have been ahead of LD 2003 this whole time. But yeah, if we want to just be, if you think it's better this way, we could just extend that item number 14 and just say that it's applicable to the shoreline zone as well, or it's not applicable to the shoreline zone. And that just clears that up.
So Jerry, we're looking at paragraph 14, or footnote 14.
Yeah, I was looking at, yeah, I was going back to the district high density shoreland, legally non-conforming lots. Somewhere in here it says that you're allowed to build on a non-conforming lot, and that the lots, the area does not matter. Somewhere in the non-conforming section. I can find it for the next meeting.
Actually, I think keep going.
I should run my little code book today.
Well, we can just leave this for.
I'll find it for next time.
Yeah, we can just make a note on ADUs in the shoreline zone, are they to meet the min? Let's say this doesn't exist for a moment. ADUs in the shoreline, do they need to meet the minimum lot, or should they be including the minimum lot? That's a question we really need to answer. I have a half acre in the shoreline zone, and I have my single family, which is already allowed. Am I allowed to do an accessory dwelling unit? Or is that not going to be allowed because of the minimum lot size? That's the question the board should answer.
And that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If it's conforming, then I think it could be okay.
Conforming is
But maybe,
fine.
do we need to put language about, because I think it's important if it's stressing a well, or if it's stressing a septic. But I don't know how you would measure that.
Well, well and septic comes in just a minute actually for water and wastewater requirements.
Okay.
That's going to be on the next page. But
So Jerry, that paragraph, you know, Bob, I believe it's 3A on page 9.
Page 9.
And it does say that non-conforming lot can be built on. There's a lot of record, you know, as of the date of this ordinance.
yeah, again, I know what you're referring to. That just means that if I have a lot that, like, if you are in a zone that has 2 acre minimum, and it's a 1 acre minimum and it's empty, I'm still allowed to build a dwelling unit on there. That's what that means. It's
Isn't
not-
that what you're saying, Jerry?
Correct. And so if we follow our ordinance again right now, a non-conforming lot
Right.
would be allowed to have an accessory dwelling unit because of that paragraph right there.
You'd be allowed to have the initial structure. But then inside the shoreline zone, you have your minimum lot size requirements.
But isn't that the minimum lot size requirement?
That's just so you can have the lot that wouldn't be allowed to have a structure. Oh, unless you did something different from what the state requires. Non-conforming lot.
This is going to be very difficult not to have unintended consequences.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. That just means that if I have an empty lot that is under your minimum lot size, I can still build that single family. I can still build on a lot that is empty and doesn't meet your minimum lot size. Because I've actually had that before where someone wanted to build something on a half-acre lot in a 2-acre minimum shoreline zone. And the neighbor said, well, why on earth are they allowed to do it? This is your minimum. And I said, and I pointed that same paragraph and said, because
Right.
they made their lot back in the 60s and it's still empty. They can still build something on it as long as it meets the other requirements.
Right.
But if I was to build anything else,
Could be prevented.
it has to meet the minimum standards for the additional units.
Right. Okay.
And that I can concur with MMA.
So I guess as a general philosophy, then, we need to decide if, in the shoreline area, if we're gonna allow the second, the accessory dwelling units.
Don't we have to?
You have to allow accessory dwelling units. It's a matter of if they need to also meet the minimum lot size in the shoreline zone. So in the high density,
Right.
where there's a 1-acre minimum, and I have a 1.5-acre lot, I have my single family home, am I allowed to build an accessory dwelling unit? That's the question. Because it doesn't meet the 1-acre minimum to put that in there as well. Or do you want to just make it consistent with the rest of the town and say, well, it's an accessory dwelling unit, let's forego the lot size minimum? That's the question. We don't have to decide tonight. If you're going to meet next week, you can let this stew and decide next time. Because we still have, I say tonight, but really it's the affordable housing development we still need to go over.
Yeah. Okay. So should we move on then?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so I think we were still just on 11B, and I'm just making some notes on that one. Be exempt from minimum lot standards, not all density requirements, because some people will probably think that means setbacks and maximum lot size. Accessory dwelling units are still required to provide minimum lot standards just located in shoreline zone. That's going to be an item that you guys will have to talk about a little bit more. C, have access to adequate water and septic as described under B12. We're going to get to that in just a second. And there's going to be a fourth one that I don't have on here, but it's just to note that it's going to be permitted on non-conforming lots, just to clear that out. And not permitted on non-conforming lots as long as it still meets the other lot size standards, so setbacks, maximum lot size coverage, everything. That's just a fourth item that I'll include later. But it's a clarity, just based on what we've been discussing on non-conforming lots.
Okay. That's what we were just talking about, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's something I'm going to include in there.
Okay. Great.
So then B12, and this is something that the state had for the accessory dwelling units, but also for the other LD 2003 residential items. I'm just putting it as its own standard item for number 12, just so you have that one consistent item and I don't have to write it 3 or 4 times. The owner of an accessory dwelling unit or regular dwelling unit must provide written verification to the municipality that each unit is connected to adequate water and wastewater services prior to certification of occupancy or similar type of approval. Written verification must include the following. A, if connected to the VAT, and obviously changes can be done where needed. If connected to the City of Bath sewer or a comparable sewer system, as defined in this ordinance, proof of adequate service to support additional flow created by the unit and proof of payment for the connection to the sewer system. B, if connected to a private septic, proof of adequate sewage disposal for subsurface wastewater. The septic system must be verified as adequate by a plumbing inspector pursuant to 30A MRS 4221. Plans for subsurface wastewater disposal must be prepared by a licensed site evaluator in accordance to 10-144 CMR Chapter 241 Subsurface Wastewater Disposal Rules. And then just to save my breath, C and D are the same thing, but for water services.
Where is the sewer line in West Bath? We know?
That would probably be the Wing Farm. I think it's the only place you have.
Is Regatta the only place?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just have it in there because that's the only public, I say public, but that's the only comparable sewer system I'm aware of in West Bath. And if it's not, then I need to update the comprehensive plan. Same thing with the City of Bath Water District, that's the only one I'm aware of.
Correct.
But you'll note that I say, or comparable sewer system, or essentially managed water system. Those are defined later in the ordinance. Someone could do their own private system to meet those demands, but that's going to be a pretty big task they have to take on. Or they can do their own private systems. Smaller systems, like the basic well and septic systems.
Okay.
And written verification would come down to permitting authority. If you're going to require a hydraulic test, fine. But if you just need someone who's providing the letter saying, I've done a well test, it's good to go, you can accept that as well. It's one of those burden of proofs. That's up to you to decide whether it's enough or not. So any questions on the water and wastewater items?
The only thing I can say about the water thing is, like, the city of Brunswick, right, the trailer park down the road, and they ran out of water down there, the city of Brunswick started trucking them in water, paying to have them trucking water. Not that, I'm just trying to relate, like, if you had an accessory dwelling, and they ran out of water, right? Like,
Right.
in other communities, the town, the city has picked up the tab. So, just make sure we think about something like that.
They have a common water supply, don't they, there, where they're trucking in water?
Yeah, I think now, or they're gonna hook them up to city water, I think.
Yeah.
They had like they had, they had wells, big wells. Just something to think about, like as far as like the burden of proof, like it might be important, that's all.
Yeah, especially in the shoreline zones.
All right.
The wells are so fickle.
And then item 13, it actually can be removed. This was something I double checked with the state. So 13 all the way down to 14. That was originally intended in there because some towns, I won't say who because we're recording, would be very restrictive and say you can only build one unit on your lot, even though you may have had a 20 acre size lot or something, and you can only build one unit. So this was more targeted for them. I mean, I don't know West Bath's policy on this, but if I have a 20 acre lot and it's a 1 acre minimum, how many units would I be permitted to build on that? If I'm allowed to build 20 units, then I don't think we need to talk about 13 at all.
But isn't the growth, couldn't you put in more units in the growth zones? Was it there?
Yeah, so again, that's assuming you have a capped size on these lots. So if I went to your code enforcement officer with the scenario that I gave, and he says, oh, you're gonna build 20 units on this 20 acre lot, that's a 1 acre minimum, sounds great, you still have to go through subdivision approval, obviously. But for what LD 2003 was saying, if West Bath was capping it and saying you can only build one dwelling unit on this 20 acre lot, even though you have a 2 acre minimum, then this is more targeted for them, saying, no, if it's an empty lot, it can build up to 4 units. If it's got a unit on there, you can build up to 3. If you got 2, you can't build any more. But
I thought in the growth zone you could do even more, like you get a designated growth zone.
yeah, in the growth area, and it's undeveloped, you'd be allowed to build 4 units under LD 2003. But that's why I'm saying, assuming you still meet the minimum lot size and the water, the septic, and all that. If that makes sense. So with LD 2003, let's use my 20 acre lot, for example. 2 acre minimum. If I'm inserting what 13 says, I can only build 4 units on there, total, on my 20 acre lot. But if I'm not including this, and the town doesn't have any restriction, that means I can build 10 10 units on that 20-acre lot. I understand this? No? You're pulling up the guys' documents too. I guess the question is if there's a restriction. If I have 20 acres, and it's a 2-acre minimum per dwelling units, is something going to stop me from building 10 total units on that lot? Which is what I would be allowed to do at the maximum. It still would go through subdivision review, and that happens regardless. But I know what you're talking about.
I thought there was something in the growth zone, it was even more accelerated, you could do quite a bit more.
That might be talking about the affordable housing development. But the growth area you're talking about, if I have an undeveloped lot, and it's the business, commercial, and urban development park, because I think those were the growth zones.
Where were they again? The urban development park and the mobile home park?
Mobile home park and the business commercial.
Okay.
If I have an undeveloped lot there, under LD 2003, I can build 4 units. As long as I still have the minimum lot size and access to water and septic and all that stuff. If I'm outside the growth area and it's an undeveloped lot, I can do 2 units. If I have a single family dwelling unit anywhere, it doesn't matter if it's growth or not, I can still build an additional 2 units. To me, this whole bit gets very confusing when we talk about how many units I can and can't build.
So you're saying 4 units, not including the main unit?
No, this is saying it's an undeveloped lot.
Right, there's nothing there.
Nothing there, I could build 4 units in a growth area, which is business, commercial, mobile home, and the business park.
Right.
Outside of those, I could have my single family already there, and then I get to build 2 more units. And if I have 2 units already on there before July 1st, I can't build anything at all except my accessory dwelling.
Wow.
It gets messy. It scales down. That's why for 13A through F, if the town doesn't have any restrictions on how many units I can build on a single lot, we can skip this item. It doesn't have to be incorporated. And again,
Well, you're really confusing me, because I thought we were restricted to 1 additional dwelling unit.
not unless the town has something that restricts a whole lot to that. I'm saying that if I go into...
Which is what this is.
Yes. So some other towns, not West Bath to my knowledge, has some stuff that says you can only build a single family dwelling. I don't think West Bath has that language at all. Do you have anything in your ordinance that says that only 1 house can be built on its lot, no matter the size? No.
It does say that if it's an area that requires 2 acres per dwelling unit, that you have to have 2 acres per dwelling unit.
Right.
So that's our rule.
Right, everyone has that, that's fine. So, what I'm saying is, if that's the case, if you just require 2 acres per dwelling unit, but you don't, but other than that, you don't restrict how many units can be built on a single lot, we can skip the 13, that does not have to be included at all. So,
Okay.
It's just very confusing.
yeah, well, it's LD 2003. So go ahead and ask what could I do, what I could say to maybe clarify this a little bit more.
It seems to me like we would need this language because there is growth zones that we
Yes.
designate growth zones, so I would think we would need this language. But maybe I'm wrong.
So this language is only really needed if you say in your ordinance that you restrict all lots to maybe one dwelling unit per lot. What you're saying, but what you just said a moment ago was that the only restriction you're aware of was that you have to provide the minimum lot size per dwelling units. That's what you told me.
Correct. And we get granted plenty of approvals for like, you know, for having another dwelling
Okay.
on your lot, as long as they had the acreage.
Okay, so if I have 20 acres and it's a 2-acre minimum, how many lots?
10.
You would say I can do 10.
Yes.
Then we don't need this. Because this is saying that you can only do 4 in a growth area.
Is that right?
Yes, I think I'm right.
Yeah, so this is only applicable if there's a pre-existing restriction.
This would only happen if, in the same exact scenario that we just went through, where I tell you I have 20 acres, if your response to me was going to be, I can only build 1 unit, then we would be talking about this a lot more. But if you're telling me I could do, but if you're telling me I could do 10 units, this can be removed, because this is more restrictive than what you're doing right now.
Okay.
All right.
So theoretically, with an LD 2000, you could do 20 acres.
Yes.
Say that again, Trey, I didn't hear.
If under LD 2020, 2003,
Yeah.
you could do 20 units.
It's based on whatever your minimum lot size per dwelling unit is. That's it. That's what this is all, this is what this section is all about. So, I'll ask you. So, if I have a 20-acre lot, and I want to build in a zone that allows only 2 acres per dwelling unit, how many units would you say I could be permitted to build on there?
Well, right now, you have to have 2 acres to dwelling unit.
And I have 20 acres. So how many units am I allowed
You
to
can.
build?
Well, you got, you know, if you're gonna build interior roads and all that, you know, you get some.
Yeah. So in that case, this is more restrictive than that.
But in that, going back to that though, you'd have to have a subdivision, you'd have to have,
Yep,
you know,
Yep,
you'd have to have lot lines laid out.
Yep.
And all of that,
Yep.
roads and interior roads, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And,
that's all fine.
yeah,
And this would have also gone through subdivision as well, but this would have been saying that if I had that 20-acre lot, I could only build 4 units at most.
well, what's to prevent somebody from splitting into 5-acre lots or 2-acre lots? And then building, you know, a primary plus an accessory dwelling unit on each
What's what I'm
2-acre
saying?
lot.
That's what I'm saying. You guys are more lenient, so you don't need to include 13A through F. 13A through F would mean I can do 4 units total on a 20-acre lot if you have a 2-acre minimum. You just told me that right now, if I wanted to build on that same lot, I could do 10 units, as long as I provide the 2 acres per unit with the infrastructure, septic, water, and all that.
But it would actually be another 10 because of this saying that an ADU
Well, you would get
Per
1 ADU,
lot, right?
you get 1 ADU per lot,
per lot, right? So
but not per unit. So you would only get the 10 dwelling units and the 1 ADU. So yeah, I know that throws the whole thing. That's why I don't want to talk about the ADU when I'm talking about this item.
Well, this is very specific. It spells it right out for people. I mean, I kind of like that.
This,
Yeah. I mean, it seems very specific. Okay, am I in a designated growth area? No. Okay, so if you're outside, then these are the rules. You know,
Yeah, but
just to
this
be
is saying
helpful
that
for people to see.
you're restricting it more
Yeah.
than we already
do.
are.
In both of them, you'd be doing subdivision anyways.
Yeah.
But right now, if I have my 20 acres and I need to provide 2 acres per unit, it's a lot more straightforward with what you have now, of just doing the subdivision, giving the permits. This would mean that if I have my same amount of acreage, and I can provide 2 acres per unit, best case is I get to do 4 units total if I'm in the growth area and it's undeveloped. But if I already have 2 units on that property, I can't build anything more than an accessory dwelling unit
On that 20 acres.
on that 20 acres.
Yeah, so this is.
Yeah, it's time to sell a lot. Create a lot. I mean, that's the whole idea.
And that goes to the
So
subdivision.
you don't want people, avoiding the subdivision ordinance, do we?
Hmm?
We don't want people avoiding the subdivision ordinance, do we?
No, but this is saying that if I've had 2 dwelling units as of July 1st, 2024, so those are 2 dwelling units that have been there since the 1970s.
Yeah.
Subdivision law would be 3 units or more within a 5-year period.
Well, that's a subdivision. 5 attorneys can't agree on that. 2 attorneys can't agree on what's a subdivision.
Well,
Okay.
I
mean, we
give him the option.
I'm not sure why you included it in this information to us.
Because this was stuff I gave for December, it was a while ago, and I only just heard from Maine DCD last week that this doesn't have to be included as long as you don't have a restriction.
Okay.
Like this was for towns that had even more restrictions than we do,
Right.
so that they can, right?
Right.
Yes, this would be something I'm dealing with.
So,
If you don't have restrictions,
do we,
this just adds on red tape, pretty much.
so I'm fine, okay, I mean, with whatever you and Jerry like to do with that, included or not, it's not done. I don't care. I can do either way. So we,
Or you can also include this if you wanted to say it's what the state item is talking about. We just want to be in compliance and move on.
I mean, I don't see a reason to be more restrictive by leaving it in, which is how I'm understanding what you're saying. So like the way that it's set up is, in the scenario you're giving, they would have to apply for subdivision anyway.
Yep.
well, when people come in and they say, I want to build some, accessory dwelling unit, they're not gonna see the plan book.
No, there's
They're
a
gonna
code
go-
enforcement officer.
Right. They're gonna. So, I guess what we need to do is to think about what's in the ordinance that's gonna guide his decision matrix. If this is helpful to him, fine, if it's not, then, I mean, this isn't anything the planning board's gonna have to deal with, because these decisions are gonna be made by the code officer, correct?
Right.
Unless it's a subdivision.
Right, unless it's a subdivision.
Right.
The other item is you could talk about accessory dwelling units counting towards subdivision counts, but the accessory dwelling unit is something that we've already covered. This is talking about regular dwelling units, over 900, over whatever your maximum size limit is.
Okay.
This is the regular single family homes we're talking about.
Okay, that's not included then.
I guess not included, yeah.
Okay.
So we don't.
Right. All right. Then we do get into the affordable housing developments. Number 14, this is the last one at the bottom of this page. It's only permitted in districts that permit multifamily dwelling units. So you would go back to your chart, that would be the mobile home park and the business commercial districts. And are in a designated growth area that can be cited in the most recent Town of West Bath comprehensive plan, which in the one that's being updated as well as the most previous one would include the mobile home park and the business commercial. Correct?
So it's all business and commercial?
All business and commercial. Because I think that's what we have in the time.
Yeah, I don't remember now.
affordable housing developments shall also, and then the page, execute a restrictive covenant recorded in the Saginaw County Registry of Deeds for the benefit of and enforceable by a party acceptable to the planning board to ensure that for at least 30 years after completion of construction, for rental housing, occupancy of all units designated affordable, and development will remain limited to households at or below 3% of the local area median income at the time of initial occupancy. Local area median income is based on Saginaw County data, and that's updated annually. For owned housing, occupancy of all units designated affordable and development will remain limited to households at or below 120% of the local area median income at the time of initial occupancy. B, demonstrate the proposal will comply with minimum lot size requirements in accordance with Title 12, Chapter 423A. And the dwelling unit density shall be 2.5 times the base density that is otherwise allowed in that location. If fractional results occur when calculating the density bonus, the number of units is rounded down to the nearest number. So, for example, if I'm built, I don't know what the density lot size is for the business commercial, but I assume that's 1 or 2 acres.
One acre.
1 acre. So that means if you were to approve a multifamily housing project that is affordable housing, in business commercial, that would be 2.5 units per acre. Right?
So 1 acre,
1 acre.
okay,
Yeah.
and say it again.
So that means if an affordable housing project was approved in the business commercial, that means I would be doing 2.5 units per acre. So that means they have to
Should
be,
be 2.
yes, if I only limit it to just the 1 acre, then you have to be 2. But, you know, if I have 2 acres, then it would be 5 units. If it's 3, then it'd be 7.5 rounded down, and so on and so on.
So if we can just go back,
Yep.
the first paragraph in 14.
Yep.
And it talks about districts that permit multifamily dwelling.
Yep.
And so we get where that's is in our ordinance.
That would be whatever you have that allows multifamily in the districts, which I believe was on page 21, item 6. Residential? Yeah, 6. So that's the only multifamily that you referenced there.
And that's in the mobile home park and business commercial.
Yep. So it'd be those 2 districts, and I believe both of them are your designated growth areas as well. So affordable housing would be allowed anywhere in those 2 districts.
So how does the availability of sewer and water play into that paragraph 14?
It wouldn't be 14 itself, it would be 14D. Provide sufficient water and septic systems as outlined under D12, which then goes back to the water and wastewater items that we discussed earlier, about having to connect and show written verifications either on the bath sewer and water or on a comparable system.
Okay, so,
I know I'm making you feel.
so, okay. Item 6 on page 21. Only permits it in mobile home park and business commercial. So then, where does it say about the thing about water and sewer again?
It makes you go back to B12, that,
B12, or 12B, that's what
or 12.
okay, I'm with you, I've got it right here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, it directs you back to that item so that I don't have to take that entire area and put it back into this one as well. I can do that if you would like.
So, what we're saying is, we can have 2.5 units on each acre. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So, Urban Development Park is 1 acre, and, oh, what's the mobile home park? That's an acre. Okay. You okay with that?
Why is it only two?
Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with whatever the planning board recommends.
Oh, my goodness.
What were you gonna say?
Why is it only 2 parking spots for 3 units?
That's what the state put down.
Is that something we can be more restrictive of and say,
Nope.
no?
They specifically put that in the statute, that it has to be 2 off-street parking spaces for every 3 proposed units. The logic behind it is that these were gonna be targeted in more
Urban areas?
urban areas that already have water and sewer, and so they're gonna be more walkable.
Sure.
And, you know, the case is, you think about, well, let's say someone was to propose that in West Bath. You're talking about the green, how close is that to Bath itself?
Not close,
Not close at all?
no.
They have sufficient parking for their residents? That's a scenario you get. You either have someone who's not going to build enough lots, and then they're just not gonna get someone to go there because they don't have a car there. Or you're right next to Bath, they're just gonna put a Bath. Because Bath also has the sewer and water.
I do believe the bus service is 3 acres now, the city bus.
Yes, my understanding is it does.
Or that, or they'll expand the system to Bath. Or they build as close as they can to Bath so that they are within walking distance of Bath.
Boy, that's a problem. That's a, we don't have street parking.
No,
On
this
state
was
road.
a concern from the very beginning when we first heard about LD 2003
This was,
for a rural area.
I held a workshop on this, this was a year or 2 ago, I think, when this first was, I think it was, not this past, November 2022. I held a workshop and everyone came out and said, why on earth is this allowed? I said, I didn't pass the law. And here we are 2 years later, or 14 months later. That's always been there.
So do we, what methods do we have to control that as an issue, as a problem?
I added a sentence in there, applicants shall demonstrate and enforce their tenants not parking on a public right of way. You can also, some towns are taking whatever steps they can to request addressing overflow parking or contributing to municipal, or paying a fine or something to municipal services to help address enforcement of some kind. But I remember when this was brought up, you don't have a police department, and it's not like you're gonna call the sheriff every time.
Yeah, this is the issue. We don't have enforcement.
And the sheriff actually refuses, right, to,
I don't think the sheriff is required to enforce something like this because it has to do with the town ordinance.
so just like Sabino parking, right, that's why the sign,
Yeah.
the sheriff can't force parking. Or refuses to at least.
Yeah, so it's sort of a catch-22 for an area, the rural parts of West Bath. It's going to be a concern.
The multifamily are only allowed in those 2 areas, correct?
Yep. Can you show me where the green is actually here?
Where the
Green that you're talking about?
mobile home park. Is
Or
that-
the project you're talking about?
Okay. Let's find out where we are here. Let's see. Right, it'd be right there.
Oh.
Actually, yeah, that's where it is.
So,
Actually, it might be right there. How about there?
okay, you said it wasn't anywhere close to it, I thought you were talking somewhere down.
Close to Bath, but like this is pretty, this isn't, it's pretty,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
it's
residential.
So those are all the actual standards that LD 2003 will require. The two parking spaces for every three affordable units, which I should note that, affordable units. That's something that's in the statute. That additional sentence was something that I believe I said I would add in after the last time I spoke about this, that the applicant, that's not an LD 2003 item, but you can still require that they address traffic and public safety by showing how the tenants won't park on public right of way.
So in this area, if I understand it right, so this area, all this area here can have the high density.
And have the affordable housing development. Yep,
All this area here.
Yep.
And this is the mobile home park area here.
yep.
But we can restrict multifamily to certain districts and so forth, as we have done already on page
Yes.
21 to only paragraph 6.
Yes.
Well, with that parking is an issue. I mean, everybody has at least a car apiece, and one's not running, they might buy another one. Yeah, one time to be had, it's not running.
Plenty of people
Or
have
have a
that.
truck and a car, and, you know.
I don't know, I think in general, though, when people build something, right, they put parking, you know.
If they don't have to, they won't.
Right.
We have nothing in our ordinance now that makes people put parking in either, though.
No, you do have something, on page 33, item 10, there shall be off-street parking for at least 2 cars per unit, or per 12.
33.
Page 33, item 10. Next page. I mean, it's like the